Thanks for checking into the State of Basketball podcast, episode 26. I'm Adam Miller, and I'm here with Jaren Wilt each and every week. We're going to be bringing you the news and notes on all 11 Division I schools in the state of Indiana because in 49 states,
it is just basketball.
So I guess a little bit of a thing off the top here. We are actually going to be not talking about all 11 schools this week. We're going to be talking about 5 because 11 is an odd number. So we have to go 6 and 5 and 5 and 6. We're going to be breaking down this week. We're going to be breaking down kind of the season a little bit for, Butler, Ball State, Indiana State, Indiana, and Evansville. So we're going to be talking about those 5 schools. We're going to talk about kind of what they did this year.
What we thought they would do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Spoiler alert, we are pretty off.
We had some things right.
We had some hits. We had some misses.
Yeah, I feel like more misses than hits, but I will say it is not because we're not ball knowers. It is because we did not do a great job to start the season.
I think it's
there was just a lot of uncertainty with so many teams having so many new players and new pieces. I think is kind of how I look at it.
And if we're being honest, like you and I didn't necessarily pay that much attention to every single team.
The wealth of our knowledge to start the season was definitely probably Indiana, Purdue, and Ball State,
and a little bit of Notre Dame. A little bit of Notre Dame, and any other school that would in a different year, like if we were not doing this show, like Indiana State would have absolutely been on our radar.
Yeah, exactly. But, so it was definitely a learning curve for us, but you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. So if you're here live, thank you for being here. I apologize for us being late. I have a 2-month-old, so a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old. So bedtimes or something. And, if you have kids, you know how it is. You don't really run the show. You're just here
at the liberty
doing what you can. Yeah. You don't decide things.
And I'm at the liberty of Adam's kids as well.
Yeah. So Jaren just gets pushed back and back, and we're here though, so we're glad to be live, and we're glad to be doing this. I think that looking back on what we thought was going to happen was a nice exercise for us. Something I think we want to do every year.
Yeah.
And going forward, I think just like I went back, I guess before we even talked about this, I went back and listened to our very first episode. And if you were like a day one person who listened to the first episode, I got to say, thank you, first of all. If you're still here and you listened to that episode, thank you. But peeling back the curtain a little bit, episode, not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
No?
Not as bad as I thought it was going to be because... Okay. Should we tell him, Jaren? Should we tell him what happened?
Yeah, let's tell him what happened. How did our journey begin?
Well, we had extensive notes for the first episode for our season preview, and we've never done this before. We've never gotten on we do like every other guy does, and we talk about basketball just to each other. We've never done it recorded in a structured format. So we tried it this year and are loving it. But the first time we did it, what did we go? 2.5 hours?
It was like 2.5 hours.
It was 2.5 hours, and that was the one where it just wasn't recording.
Yeah. It just we missed the notification that I was using an older laptop that I just
it was
had sitting
too
around.
Big or too much data or something.
Yeah.
It just didn't save. So we lost it all. And we luckily decided normally we record on Sunday nights and we recap, everything. So that Monday morning, you can have something fresh. And I guess that was Saturday. And we were had already started late at least 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
So probably 10:30, 11. And we're we got to do another one.
Yeah.
We have to do another one.
So
And
we called it quits that night. We're like, okay, we still have time.
no,
Let's try
we
again
did
tomorrow.
we did a second one that night, didn't we?
No, I think we waited till the next night where we waited to the next night because we moved from. So at first we were using my dining room. We used my dining room. We then decided, okay, my laptop is just not going to work for it. I had
Mhm.
a better computer in the other room, kind of my kitchen, my living room office area. So we decided the next night, let's try from there. We'll plug into my computer with more processing power.
Yeah,
We
your
recorded.
desktop significantly better, you know?
Yeah, we recorded, and that's what we used for. Really, that's what we used for every episode, other than these ones that since we've been remote. And we recorded again, probably an hour and probably 2 hours. We cut it
It
down a
was
little
like
bit.
1:45, 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we found out that I think we didn't have mic audio for one of us. So
Me.
like the audio was
For me,
yeah,
I think.
yeah. And there's just for some reason it didn't record. So we did
Which,
that.
like, after the first one that got scuffed, we were like, "We're gonna, like, record 30 seconds
Yeah.
just to make sure everything works," right? Like, why would we
Yep.
not do that every time? Like, just to make sure. And we didn't do it.
Yeah.
We didn't do it, and
Yeah,
it was
we
scuffed.
just we were impatient, so we did another hour and 45, 2 hour recording, nothing. And at this point, it's probably 10 o'clock, and I had to, we spent 20 minutes troubleshooting, ran it back again, and it was fine. As fine as we could expect. It worked. So our first episode, we technically recorded 3 times,
Yeah, which is egregious.
and we didn't finish until like 1 a.m. and after like all the editing and everything was done.
It was rough,
It
but,
was a it was a
I
it was a tough way to start.
that's why I say, you know, if you went and watched it or listened to it, it was not as bad as, it could have been. Like, like I'm not one who really cares, like, hearing my voice, like, that doesn't really bother me, and especially, like, you know, making clips and for our channel and, you know, recording things and listening to the podcast, like, that doesn't bother me at all. So, like, that didn't bother me, but I was fully expecting, like, just a clunky
We were
it was
tired.
clunky, admittedly,
We
yeah.
were tired. We were frustrated. We
Yeah,
just
just, like and at that point, we were, like, zooming through.
we skipped so many of our notes.
Yeah. So
Like
there will
there were
be
just
things
things we
that we're
didn't
gonna
talk
talk
about.
about here that, like, I'll be like, "Okay, we didn't talk about this in the podcast, but it was in our notes because we did talk about it on one of the 3 iterations of our very first episode." So, I mean, it's like Hollywood, baby. I mean, no one makes a pilot that gets immediately picked up and reproduced like that. You gotta record a couple pilots, maybe you replace an actor, you know, maybe you change some lines. So, but we're here. Thank you for being here on YouTube or Twitter. I almost said Twitch on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you are, or maybe you're listening to this after on Spotify or Apple. Um, we goofed. So, like, first off, when I listened to this, I was like, first thing we need to do is we need to rank these teams preseason because we did not do that. I don't know if we were like
I
afraid we didn't know enough ball, like not know enough ball, but like not know enough about the teams because
I
we
think
didn't pay close attention to the previous season and what they did in the portal, and we were kind of like scrambling,
I
but
think it
we
was a
didn't preseason
combination of
rank.
yeah, I think it was a combination of that and just we just didn't like as all good podcasts go on, like as the weeks go on, you just add more things.
Yeah,
And I just think that was one of those things that like afterwards, you're like, dang, we should have done that. And then we did it for week one.
yeah,
Or we did it after week one.
yeah. I
Um,
because it wasn't even in our notes, so I think it might just not have been in our radar,
yeah, it's just something I just don't think we thought
which
about
is fine. I
that we
mean,
considered.
we've come a
Yeah.
long way,
Yep.
but
I like to think
so
so.
you know, so we've ranked things after the first week. So, um, we have like for the first week, everyone played 2 games at least, and we had 2 teams that played 3 games.
Yep.
So that's neither here nor there. Let's just go through our week 1 power rankings, and then we'll go through our final power rankings after week 18. So our week 1 power rankings, we had Purdue at number 1, aged like fine wine. Uh, Purdue Fort Wayne at number 2, Indiana State at number 3, Indiana at number 4, Ball State at 5, Butler at 6, Evansville at 7, Notre Dame at 8, IUPUI at 9, Valpo at 10, and Southern Indiana at 11. Those are, like, roughly pretty close. I mean, like, obviously, if you're looking for the one that sticks out like a sore thumb, like, right now, it's Purdue-Fort Wayne at 2.
Yeah.
They they didn't finish at 2, but they started 3-0 that week with a win over DePaul.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I
I mean,
mean,
it
you can't
was,
fault us. I mean, we kind of took these power rankings as, like, here's what we've seen this season. We're gonna
mhm.
rank off of everything we've seen this season.
Yeah. We didn't know DePaul was going to be terrible.
We had a clue.
Yeah, but like we didn't
I
know they
didn't
were
know
going
they
to
were
be
gonna be
that
that bad.
bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But talking about our final rankings, Purdue, again, never lost, never left the one spot. That was just a
Yeah,
static
ran the table.
national runner ups too. So they were good. Indiana State finished 2, very logical. Butler at 3, so they made quite a jump throughout this season. Indiana ended at 4. I don't know that they left the 4 spot. They might have dropped to 5 once. They might have moved up to 3 once, but they were. I think them and Purdue, I think, were our most static.
Yeah, Indiana occupied the 4th spot a lot. I feel like, they might have jumped up at one point.
I don't think they were ever 2.
They were
I
never
know that for
2 because I
sure.
think Indiana State just popped
Yeah.
after PFW kind of fell
Um,
off.
and what we'll do is we'll obviously we still have 6 more schools to mention in our final rankings, but while it's on my mind, we'll over the next couple weeks we'll put out some graphics that show each team and their week by week power rankings, so we can
Yeah.
kind of see like what their average uh, power ranking was throughout the season. So we'll work on that, and we'll have those out on social media. So look for those. But Notre Dame finished at 5, Evansville at 6, Purdue Fort Wayne at 7. Like we talked about, kind of took a drop there. Ball State 8 also took a little bit of a drop. Valpo finished at 9. Southern Indiana finished at 10, and IUPUI finished at 11. IUPUI, a team we thought was going to be better, they got off to a hot start. They won their first 2 games and then didn't win very many the rest of the season.
They won the very first college
They won the
basketball game of the
first
season.
game of the 2023-2024 season. That is correct, because they played at 11 a.m. on
Free throw, Jaren.
opening
Do you
day.
remember who they played?
Not a clue.
You don't remember? It's a very spot on basketball name, like a
Oh,
basketball.
it was Spalding, right?
Yep,
Spalding
that's right.
University. Yep.
They
Okay.
played
See,
Spalding.
I just need a little bit of a refresher. I dropped my
Yeah.
pen that I was playing with.
So, yeah, I mean, PFW at 2. I mean, they started out hot, 3-0. I mean, they started out really, really hot. Their struggles didn't really come until the Horizon League, but
Yeah,
we'll
really
talk about that
after
later.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Ball State, kind of
Yeah.
where they started and kind of
Mhm.
where they ended.
Yeah, so, Ball State started in KenPom, which is kind of like our de facto ranking. We'll see if we how we feel about that, using Evan Mia or something else. But as of right now, we're talking about
If you
KenPom.
are a viewer and have a preferred metrics kind of system
Yeah.
that you think we should use, let us know. Let us know in the comments.
Or if
Let us know
Evan
in the
Mia, you're
chat.
in the chat, if Evan Mia's in the chat and you wanna, throw us a free account and,
We are happy to
waive our fee, we
happy to
will
say that we
yeah,
are
we will invoke your
uh,
name 30 times an episode.
at
But,
least 11 times.
yeah, so we are, we're using KenPom for these things because it's just the most accessible for us, I guess. So Ball State, they started at 228th in KenPom, and they finished the season at 266th. So they went down, which we'll kind of talk about the whole thing. We kind of projected their record. This was the first time we talked about. We didn't actually give an official prediction, but we said like a successful season for us would be getting above 500 in the MAC. and or getting to 500 in the MAC and being over 500 in like your total season. So we projected they would go like if you're above 16 and 15, you would be happy, and above 8 and 8 in the MAC. And talking about like, okay, who do we have here? The people that we thought would be impactful, we talked about Mickey Pearson Jr. because he was the only returning starter. And we're like, okay, he was more of a role player. Can he take a bigger role? And then the other person that we talked about was Bashir Jihad because he was playing kind of behind Peyton Sparks the last 2 years. Could he come in? Could he make a difference? Could he add? Kind of starts the floor a little bit. Could he play in transition? And we projected them to finish 8th in the MAC. And I remember us talking about this season, talking about like, will they be good? Will they not be good? And one thing that stuck out to me was Ben Hendricks. I think he's a fifth year senior.
Yep.
Said that this was like in August already, like the tightest knit group he's been a part of. So we were like, that alone will carry you through the tough times.
Yeah.
And the rough stretches of the MAC. I don't know that it necessarily worked out that way, but like that's kind of what we thought was going to happen. Like if you're Michael Lewis in year 2, success is getting above 500 and
especially after having
building.
the first, season that he had where they
Yeah.
were wildly successful, in my opinion.
Yeah. And like, bigger crowds coming to Worthen was like a huge deal. And like that continued obviously into year 2, 2, 3, 2, 2. And so, I guess we can talk about what actually happened, but like we thought they would be pretty successful. We thought they would be above 500, but did it happen?
It did not. They did finish 15 and 16. So overall, and then 7 and 11 in the conference. So not as good of a record as we thought. And that was actually, they finished 9th in the MAC. So one spot back. They didn't make the MAC tournament, which was a heartbreaker. It came down to quite literally the final game of the season. They just needed to win and needed a couple other teams to lose, and that unfortunately did not happen.
Yeah, we were going through tiebreaker scenarios like crazy.
Yeah. I was reaching out to friends that I know, trying to figure out, okay, what is the exact scenario?
If there's a 3-way tie, they get it. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and there was not. But I do want to talk about some of the notable games that they had. So they did play in the MAC Sunbelt Challenge. So, comparable competition, just not within the same conference, which I liked because they played twice. They played at the beginning of the season during the typical like bye game, block, if you will. They won against Old Dominion. So off to a hot start. It's like, okay, they're winning against other teams that are their skill level or better. And then about midway through the season in February, I guess a little bit towards the end of the season in February, they played Texas State, who was also, at that point in the season, a comparable opponent, and they lost.
Because that's the one where they like matched up like
they like
reseeded
reseeded
net rankings or records or like where your standing was in your conference, and they were like number 1 team plays the number 1 team, number 2 team plays the number 2 team.
Yeah, so it was like a combination of net and conference standings, but they did lose by 8. Again, that was part of the tough stretch in the season that they had. I do want to call out they played 2 in-state games. They lost both, unfortunately. Lost to Evansville by 24, and then lost to Indiana State by 11.
Which is
wild
insane.
Difference. Like Indiana State is not even arguably.
It's objectively. They were objectively better than Evansville. I don't have the score in front of me, but I'm pretty sure they boat raced Evansville.
We'll talk about it here in a few. I've got it written down for Evansville. But
Indiana State, 70th best team in the country, right?
Yeah, that is how it falls down.
That's crazy, especially like the game was. The game was in Evansville. Yep. But yeah, crazy that happened.
Yeah, and then talking about the kind of the important players that ended up at the end of the season, we talked about Jihad and Pearson playing big roles. We thought they were guys that were gonna, be standout players. Kinda was the case. Jihad was a All MAC second team player. He was first team All District according to the NABC. He did lead the team in both points and rebounds at 8 rebounds and 18.6 points per game. So spot on there. We kind of expected him to be a key role or to have a key role. Jalen Anderson, first year with the Cardinals. Shockingly, he was the team's second best scorer at 15.8 points per game, and he also had 4.5 assists per game, which was far and away the most assists per game from any player, which makes sense because he was that that court facilitator for the team. Pearson, I don't have his scoring noted, but he was I think third or fourth in scoring for the team. He did make academic All MAC and then academic All District, so he's a smart guy.
Pearson was a guy who
seriously.
Pearson was a guy who his bad games were bad games for the team.
Yeah.
Like if he,
it was like they go as he goes kind of thing.
Yeah, basically. And if he had a rough game, like they just lost, pretty much.
Yeah. But it that's really all I have. So I mean, we were pretty spot on, I think, in terms of guys that we thought were going to be key players. Unfortunately, the Cardinals did not perform like we thought overall. Like I mentioned, finished ninth in the MAC, just out of MAC tournament eligibility. But it exciting future for the Cardinals, I think.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in 3 weeks. But...
yeah, we got some things coming down the pipeline. I'm not I don't want to give a A, B, C, D grade on these things because you could take it a different ways. Like, did we rate the team well, or did the team perform? Like, putting your expectations on the team is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But let's just say, based on what our expectations were, if you went into the season with our expectations, would you be pleased or disappointed? I'm gonna say you'd be disappointed, right?
Yeah.
So I think this season isn't a disappointment, but you're disappointed based on what our preseason projections were because getting to 8th in the MAC means you make the MAC tournament. They didn't get there.
Yeah.
They had, a second team MAC player in Jihad, and they just had some odd struggles and some bad stretches that kind of hurt the season. And I think if they could work through those a little bit better, be a successful season. Yep. We just wanted them to win one more game. The MAC was really, really tricky for them, though.
Yeah, the MAC is a sneaky conference. I will say
it's tough.
It's surprisingly tough. But let's talk about Butler, right? So they started the season KenPom 61, finished the season 96, so stayed in the top 100.
Backwards. They started at 96 and they finished at 61.
I don't know how to read.
It's
improvement. They started in the top 100. They stayed, almost made the top 50.
Mm-hmm.
Good team. They I think exceeded all of our expectations.
I'll
let you talk about that.
Let's kind of talk about where we thought they were going to go. So they started the season at 96th in KenPom, and again, this is a short site that we will not do. We will put actual numbers on this next year. We didn't pick how many games they would win, but we thought that KenPom said that they were going to go 6-14 in the Big East, and we said that is not what we want. Thad Matta has had one losing season in his career, and it was his first year at Butler last year. And so we were like, okay, he's going to our thing was basically get to 10-10 in the Big East, because the Big East is the toughest conference, in my opinion, in America.
Far and away.
I mean, you could argue the Big 12, the Big East, whatever, but you have the back-to-back national champion in the Big East. So we were get to, finish 8th in the Big East, and that would be successful for us. If you finish 8th or better in the Big East, that would be I'm happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lot to build on. It was kind of like a rebuilding year with him. with Thad Matta in his second year. So some people we kind of thought would be impactful is one guy that I think everyone was high on, but I specifically was high on was Posh Alexander. He came over from St. John's, and we were like, he's not going to shoot a ton, but he's going to, hand out dishes. And he got a triple double.
Yep.
Yeah, he got a triple double, right? Is that our only one in the state
I
this
believe
year?
so. I
Because
think so.
Braden Smith was close.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, no one else did.
Okay, so he got a triple double. I mean, like he's just great, and like I think perfectly tailored for what Thad Matta wants to run. And then two other guys that we thought would be impactful were Pierre Brooks. He transferred from Michigan State, and DJ Davis from UC Irvine. So we're like, these guys, I think will make a difference. And I mean, I would say the three most impactful players, like in actuality, like really, really did well. We talked about Finlay Bijak, the freshman. We thought that he might be able to, kind of stretch the floor a little bit, be it like a big guard who could play a little inside and out. And he did pretty well, but kind of our expectations for this were like finish 8th or better in the Big East, and you're happy because you only had 4 returning players. So like it was a rebuilding year, but like our expectations weren't high, but we were like that. I think they got like higher as the season went because we saw what was happening and we're like, it's kind of clicking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so like we talked about, they finished 61 in Ken Palm. So, based on Ken Palm, they should have made the NCAA tournament because they were one of the 64 best teams or 68 best teams. Finished 18 and 15 overall. They were 9 and 11 in the Big East. So never forget. Some notable games that they had. They did lose to Florida Atlantic by 5, 91-86. Florida Atlantic was,
top 25
for
for
top 25
the first 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, for most of the season. They did get that loss. They did take that loss while they were a ranked team. They lost to UConn twice, but they lost by single digits both times, which if you follow UConn at all, not very many teams did.
Okay, help me out here. Is it Butler Bulldog Guru or is it Kyle the Butler fan who I think it's Bulldog Guru who is tweeting to hang the banner every single NCAA game was like hang the banner, only lost to UConn by single digits.
Yeah.
And had 2 of them because they held them to single digit losses in both games.
Yeah, so that's to me is notable because again, not a lot of teams. They did something that not a lot of teams were able to do.
Butler's a team like Indiana bias aside, like Butler's a team I 100% thought should be in the tournament. I think if they literally win one more game in the Big East, they're fine. Or if they beat FAU, they're in. Like they're unequivocally in.
Yeah, they definitely were a team that were on the bubble, like firmly on the bubble.
A lot of
and it just happened to pop as the season ended. They also won against Texas Tech in overtime, so it was a huge game, a huge resume builder for them.
Big win at the time for sure.
Really good team. Most important players, like we talked about, Posh, finished with just under 5 assists per game, 11.3 points per game. Pierre Brooks, their leading scorer, 14.8 points per game. He shot just over 40% from 3. So knockdown shooter there. Finley Bizjack, we talked about, he was a Big East all freshman team member. So his stats maybe weren't overpowering in terms of his scoring, but made an impact, was good enough to, make that all freshman team in a very tough conference. So,
Run it back. Finley, come back to Butler. You want to be a Bulldog for life, dude. Listen, let me tell you, there's nothing better than sitting in Hinkle when you're like 38 and just know that you can just walk into that building and they will just shower you with praise. Come
You're
back,
not
Finley.
wrong. You're not wrong. Shout out Finley. DJ Davis, also impact player, 13.5 points per game. He shot at 35% from three. He kind of did it all. He, middle of the pack with every other stat, but he high impact player for them throughout the entire season. He was the clutch player. He was the guy that, like, if they were down and needed a basket, they went to him, and I think that helped them win a lot of games. Finished 8th in the Big East, so a little bit higher than what we thought. They did lose in the Big East tournament to Xavier in the first round. I think if they won that game, we're looking at an NCAA tournament team.
I think so too.
Wasn't the case. They lost by 4, and then they were an NIT 4 seed, and they lost to Minnesota in the first round by 1. Absolutely heartbreaking way to end the season, especially because the later rounds of the NIT were in Hinkle. So
yeah, the semis and the championship were in Hinkle.
They had an opportunity to, never leave Indianapolis after winning against Minnesota.
That was like a.
Did they play Minnesota at the Barn, or did they play? I can tell you.
I think they played in Hinkle because they played in Hinkle because only the top 4 seeds are seeded in the NIT. Yeah, and so they could have played 3 games. The like the catch-22 of winning that game against Minnesota would be then you have to play Indiana State in the next round.
Which I think would have been an incredibly fun game to watch.
Which is a win-lose no matter how you draw it up for us.
Yeah.
But we said they wanted to finish 9th out of 11th in the out of 11 in the Big East and finish above 6-14 in the Big East. They did that. They finished 9-11, and they were 8th in the Big East, which I think to me is a successful season.
Yeah, in the toughest conference in basketball.
Yeah,
they were a team with a lot of question marks.
And they
weren't really sure.
They decimated Marquette on the road.
Yep.
They decimated Creighton on the road. So like they got huge wins. If they just get one,
it was a 1-point win against Creighton, but
still, I mean, winning at Creighton is hard.
Almost dropped a bill.
I mean, didn't UConn lose at Creighton?
Yes.
In like their first, they got whooped. So and I mean, hang the banner. Only lost to UConn by single digits twice. I think it was like there's no way around it. I mean, a successful season. I think is like a kind of a tease, but like you got to get Bijak back. Like he needs to come back. I think that he can be a Butler great. So would love to have him back, but they picked up some good pieces. But we'll talk about that on a later date. Right now, would you say successful season?
Yeah.
You're pleased if you're a Butler fan?
Very pleased. Yeah. I'm pleased with the overall season. I am displeased at the way the season ended.
Yep, absolutely. Because it was like you're going to the NCAA tournament and it just kind of fell off.
Yeah.
And the wheels fell off there at the end. But like seemingly you have Posh back. Right?
Yeah.
From everything I've seen. So they should have a good starting 5. But let's talk about another team. Let's head down south a little bit and let's talk about Evansville. They started the season. There's 362 teams in D1 this past year, and they started at 332. They ended the season at 208 in KenPom. So, okay, let's talk about that. They were projected to finish 11th in the Missouri Valley with 8 wins overall, 23 losses, and go 4-16 in the Missouri Valley. And we didn't really know, like Evansville, I think was one of the teams that I felt probably like the least sure of what to expect
100%.
Because they were only bringing back 4 people. They only had 4 returners and they had like 8 freshmen. So like that's a ton of people to bring in a tough league. Yeah. That's a tough league. And so guys that we thought would pop, we did okay. Gage Bobe, we were like, he's a 5th-year senior. He shot 44% from 3. Our thing was like, if he can shoot more, he's shooting 44. If you're shooting above 40%, like, you need to shoot more because you're like, that percentage needs to go down. You're not shooting enough. Like, if he can hit 12 points per game, like, it'll be a great season. That didn't happen, but he had his moments and he got some starts this year. Kenny Strawbridge Jr., he was like kind of the sure piece for us. Like,
Yeah,
he's
I'm
gonna
pretty sure
pop
he was
for
a
Evansville.
JUCO transfer.
I think so.
But just a insane scoring ability.
Yeah. He started the season at 973 points, and I think he was his 5th year.
Yes.
So I think he's just done.
Yeah.
But like, we were like, he's a guy that can, he can score the basketball and will do well. And a guy that you personally were high on because Evansville is your team, that we kind of delegated. You were high on Chuck Bailey the third. You
Yep.
thought that he was, going to provide some spark.
Yeah, I mean, he was a number 3 point guard coming out of the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
Very talented player, I thought, and unfortunately, I'll say it. This was one that we didn't talk about in our season preview when we talked about it in the first 2 that we recorded.
Yeah.
And then the third go around, the final product, we omitted that. But
yeah, when you cut an hour and a half off the show,
Yeah. I'll you can call me out if you don't believe me.
We'll send you our notes.
I'll send you the notes. Yeah, I'll send you the receipts. But guy that I was really high on for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think he definitely offered. Like, he came off the bench all season, but I think he played really well. And then the last guy not on our list at all, and probably not on a lot of people's list, was Ben Himmerkaus, if you will. Not on our radar, but was had a lot of accolades, obviously, and we'll get to that in a second. But kind of what we thought would make this season successful was, what they go the year before, 5 and like 22.
They had 5 wins. Yeah,
5 and 22. So we were like, or I guess not 5 and 22, 5 and 27.
27. Yeah.
So we were like, if you can get to, so they projected to win 8 games. We're like, if you can finish with 10 wins, that will be a very successful season. Like, if you can build on whatever you did the year before, get to 10 wins, get closer to 500, finish 10 and 21 and be happy. Did they do it, Jaren?
Yeah. So they finished 17 and 18. So just below 500 overall. But again, that is 7 more wins than we hoped for them. And we were very excited. I mean, we loved watching the Aces all season. They finished 6 and 14 in the Valley. So tough conference schedule and a tough conference. It happens. But again, they were 3 games shy of hitting the 21 mark after winning 5 games the year before. So massive turnaround there. Some notable games, right? So all mostly in-state games for me that I'm looking out for. Win over Ball State by 24, huge. They lost to Indiana State twice, 87-73, 85-67. So definitely, let Indiana State kind of roll them, but Indiana State rolled every team that they played pretty much. So that's okay still. They did win against Valpo twice as well. So another in-state matchup there and conference matchup, 78-75 and then 63-62. So close games, not what we expect from Evansville, right? We talked about Valpo finishing towards the end in our power rankings overall. But again, a win's a win. Important players that we talked about. Himmerkaus was not on our radar at all. After this season, he's on NBA scout radars. Like, he's finished with 14.7 points per game, almost 5 rebounds per game, shot the 3 at 41%. So huge jump from, I believe, NAIA the year before. No one knew what to expect. I think he had the confidence in himself. Ragland had confidence in him. And now Himmerkaus is a guy that's looking at, he's testing the NBA waters. Like, he's that good.
And he was playing in, like, to go from NAIA to like testing the NBA waters in 365 days is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's incredibly impressive. He did win Missouri Valley. He did make the Missouri Valley Conference all newcomer team, rightfully so. He was also a scholar athlete first team. So not only can he play ball at a very high level, he gets it done in the classroom. Love to see it. Chuck Bailey, guy that I was high on. He didn't let me down. Finished with 8.4 points per game, 35% from three. He was an MVC all freshman team and MVC all bench team member, which is incredibly impressive with how deep the Missouri Valley is. Yassine Toomey, a guy that Adam and I didn't really follow at all. He was finished the season at 10.8 points per game and 54% from the field with 6.5 rebounds a game. So,
I mean, he led their team in overall points this year.
Yeah.
As we learned last week, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
It was last week.
It
was last week. And then Tanner Cuff, another guy, he was Missouri Valley all bench team. So 2 guys coming off the bench, making an impact, making that all bench team in a deep league. Looking at, actual season results, right? We wanted them to win 10 wins. We wanted them to get 10 wins.
Mm-hmm.
They finished 10th in the Missouri Valley, which was above where we thought, just by 1 spot. In the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, they won their first game against Illinois State by 6. And then they unfortunately had to play Drake, who won the conference.
Yeah.
So tough
and
draw
almost
there.
Won their first round NCAA. Yeah, could have won it.
Yeah. They lost by 21 there. So not great, but it was against a great Drake team. Made the CBI, won their first round against Quinnipiac by 1, and then went on to play in the quarterfinal and lost to Seattle 71-57. So they were, they were a postseason team. They made a postseason tournament, which is wildly successful. I think that alone shows that this season was a success for the Aces.
Yeah, I mean, if you're sitting at home and your name's Elliot and you are, drinking your crow's nest coffee and you're sitting on the couch next to your dog who's in the cat in the stroller, and you're like, how did we do this year? You go, it was a success. This season was successful. It was as good as as good as a coffee from Crow's Nest. It was as good as you could expect. I mean, exceeded our expectations. I think kind of stuff that you don't if you go back 10 years from now and you look at the season, you see 17 and 18, you go, was it that good? And then you have to remember that they went 6-14 in conference largely because the guy that's testing the NBA waters was injured.
Yeah, he missed 7 games.
Yeah. So your best player was out. And those games are tough and really could have gotten above the 500 mark, but we wanted them to win 10. And they did that they eclipsed that by 7 points. There are 7 games. So by all accounts, I think a successful season.
Yeah, a team that didn't have as successful as a season as we hoped, Indiana. They finished at 91 in Ken Palm. They dropped out of the top 100 at one point, but finished the season strong, ended at 91. They started the season at 50. Mm-hmm. So pretty sizable drop. We'll kind of talk about the why, but talk to us. Tell me about our preseason thoughts on them.
Yeah, so their projected record in Ken Palm was to go 9-11 in the Big Ten and to finish 6th. And for you and I, is it because we grew up Indiana fans, we didn't think that sounded right? Or, I mean, I think looking at all of these teams, right? You look at any team you talk about, you always look at all of the positives and you're like, okay, if everything clicks, that's what I'm going off of.
Yeah.
Or if most things click, then this should happen. And I think that's what happened with Indiana, because we were like, they've got great pieces coming in. They have a 5-star freshman in Mackenzie Mbako. that was someone we thought that was gonna kind of make a difference this year. Like he's coming in, he should be able to shoot the ball, drive the ball, and they've got Malik Renew, a 5-star sophomore, the former 5-star, now a sophomore. He's coming back. So we thought Malik Renew was going to be a big piece, and then they go out and add Khalil Ware, who transferred from Oregon, also a 5-star McDonald's All-American, 7-foot center, rim protector, lob threat, can stretch the floor. And we were thinking of this like Mbako is going to shoot the 3, drive a little bit. Renew's going to post up. Ware's going to play inside out. And we were like, this is what we think can happen. Like this is kind of like, we look at these as like a glass half full, I guess.
Yeah.
And didn't exactly happen. So we were kind of expecting the best. So kind of we thought like, okay, you've got notable game playing UConn this year. Your second year in a row playing the reigning national champions. So I guess they have to go pick up UConn for this offseason to play them in the next season. But only 20% of your scoring is back. You lose a generational player in Trace Jackson Davis. You got to replace him. You replace him with Khalil Ware. Not a bad guy to replace him with, but
no.
I mean that wasn't where the problems were in my mind.
Yeah.
And all the time we said, if they can just get to March, they're going to be cooking. And because of a multitude of reasons, they couldn't get there. But like we talked about, their perimeter defense could be like their guards on defense could be some of the best in the country, because Mbako we thought was very big for a 3. He started the season not really knowing how to play Woody's defense, and it showed.
Yeah.
He got so much better at the end of the season. But we were like, if you have Xavier Johnson locking down the 1 and Trey Galloway locking down the 2, like no one's going to score. Like no one will score from the guard spot. And that didn't exactly happen because of mostly injuries.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it injuries, and then Mbako, the learning curve there, just learning a new defense. Admittedly, Mike Whitson plays a tough defense that not a lot of, or runs a tough defense that not a lot of kids are used to. And so there was just a learning curve. And we saw that early on, and that translated to I think, Mackenzie's offense.
And that's something that like sounds kind of silly, is like, like they didn't understand it. They don't know this defense, but even like guys like Miller Kopp and like Trace Jackson Davis and, all the people who played on the last 2 years for Mike Woodson, is like, he doesn't run a defense that's anything like the rest of the people in college. Like his defense is different, and you have to defenses are so like automatic and instinctual. So you have to completely retrain your brain from what you've done in AAU and high school or your first 2 years of college to like make that switch.
Mm-hmm.
And like defenses, you see, like if you can score, you can score. But like defenses take so long to click because of all those things that need to go together.
Yeah. And I mean, the things that did start to come together at the end of the season, things were looking bleak for the Hoosiers around December, January. Things weren't great. They did finish Ken Palm 91, like we talked about. They finished 19-14 overall. And then they finished at 500 in the Big Ten, 10-10. So turned it around. They were well below 500 for most of the season. Like we're talking worst team in the Big Ten for, the first half of the Big Ten schedule.
Hey, they were top of the Big Ten at one point.
They were
in December.
Things were looking good in December, and then winter break hit, and everything kind of went downhill for a moment in the Big Ten. Again, injuries played a big part in that. But notable games like we talked about, they lost to UConn by 20, lost to Kansas by 4. Kansas was, a number. They were a 4 seed.
4 seed.
Yeah. So a great Kansas team there. Almost won. Just didn't pull it off.
Was up like 85-90% of the game.
Yeah. It was just end of the game came in, and and Bill Self is just a great coach
Yeah.
and turned it around for the Jayhawks. In-state matchups, they lost to Purdue, their only in-state opponent this year, twice by 21 and 20. So not looking great there. Some really big losses. The worst part about that, if you're a Hoosier fan, is that you gave Zach Edey his only career three-pointer,
Yeah.
which
He's
is just an absolute dagger.
put him at from 0% to 50% on the season.
Yeah. So that's a dagger if you are a Hoosier fan. But we also liked it because we talk about Purdue too.
Yeah. It's one of those happy, sad moments, you know?
Yeah. Notable players, Mackenzie Mbako. He did end up turning things around in the season. He averaged 12.2 points per game. He was an 82% free throw shooter, shot just under 33% from three. He was co-freshman of the year, and he made the all freshman team, obviously. So, great. He finished the season exactly kind of where we thought he'd be. Khalil Ware, he was just under 16 points per game, just under 10 rebounds a game. So he's almost averaging a double-double. He was a 58% shooter from the field, and he shot 42% from three on very low volume, but still, when he shot the ball, it went in, almost half the time. He was Big Ten third team in the coaches poll and second team in the media poll. I think media poll is more important to me, but he was also all defensive team, to no surprise.
Which I think is the way he guards the rim. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. He was average. He was like just under 2 blocks a game, as well. So Malik Renew, 15 points per game, second leading scorer, just under 3 assists per game. You love that from him. He's a 55% shooter from the field, 33% from three, again on low volume. Was a Big Ten honorable mention in both coaches and media. Trey Galloway, their leader for most of the season with Xavier Johnson out, was at 10.6 points per game, just under 5 assists per game.
And to put it into, I just want to put it into perspective. He had to. Gabe Cupps was the plan was Gabe Cupps to be the backup point guard, but he kind of had to play some lead guard and backup point guard to Trey Galloway, and Trey Galloway was supposed to be the second option.
Yep.
From the guard spot. So they were playing from behind, I would say all season, even when Xavier Johnson came back.
Yeah.
He was, they were still trying to play catch up. If there was another month of the season, they'd make the tournament.
100%. They went on a 6-game win streak or 5-game win streak to end the season. Well,
to end the regular season.
Yeah, in the regular season. They did finish 6th in the Big Ten, so right where they were projected. They ended up having, we talked about perimeter defense. They gave up a lot of threes this year, but in conference play, they did end up having the third best perimeter or 3-point defense. But overall, the 211th 3-point defense, which was below they were just below the average.
And I think part of that is their perimeter defense obviously could have been better, but it's the same thing. When you're playing Zach Edey, you don't want to drive to the lane. When you got Khalil Ware, and then you got Khalil Ware waiting down low to swat your shot. You don't want to drive into the lane, so you're taking a ton of shots from three, and
they just let a lot of those shots fall.
Yeah, I think Mike Woodson's defense is kind of designed to give up 3-pointers a little bit more than other people's, and they weren't quite ready to implement it, I guess, and run it well. And you can see as the season went on, when they were playing better competition, who they didn't shoot as well as those other people early on, so it kind of balanced out.
Yeah, and then in the Big Ten tournament, being a 6th seed, they got a first round bye. They did play Penn State. They won by 2 after losing to them twice in the regular season. So That is always, it's hard to win against a team 3 times in a season. They got it done with Penn State. They didn't got boat raced by Nebraska in the third round, 93-66. But Nebraska was playing their best basketball of their lives. They did get invited to the NIT, but they declined it. So they would have been a postseason team there. But that's
the Hoosiers.
That's the Hoosiers, and now this is probably gonna be the longest.
Yeah, I mean, we're not. I mean, we don't have to go down. I mean, there's obviously a lot of accolades here, but let's just kind of. I'll just kind of run through the expectations because we didn't like expectations. We didn't have any. Basically, is Indiana State. So they started at 111th in KenPom and they finished 38th. And they were projected to go 12-8 in the Missouri Valley and finish 4th. And we like kind of deemed success is to like finish above 4th because there was like a big clog between like 4th and 10th in the Missouri Valley. And you're like, if you can finish outside of that group, like finish 3rd or 2nd, like that's successful for Indiana State. But what's that mean? I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with your game.
Yeah.
Like I was not familiar with Josh Shirt's game here because they absolutely cooked. I apologize to Xavier Bledson. As I was listening, I don't know where I saw it typed this way or if my phone just auto corrected it, but like in my notes and what I was saying, I called him Xavier Bledsoe, and it just like is like it's like nails on a chalkboard every time I hear it. So Xavier Bledson, was like the kind of guy coming back for them, is what I thought. Excuse me. I thought he was going to be like the guy. Thought he was going to start. He was 6th man, coming off that bench. And Julian Larry shot 46% from 3. Isaiah Swope was kind of coming in shooting 40%, and he's like that volume shooter. And then Robbie Avila was like the 4th highest scoring freshman in Indiana State history. So those were kind of the guys that we thought were going to do it. I mean, Avila and Larry were 2nd team all Missouri Valley picks. Like it's probably those two. You might get a little bit from Swope. Maybe Bledson comes in, and like we just really weren't familiar with the game that Indiana State was playing. And I apologize because there's no like bigger Indiana State like Sycamore fan than me this past year. Like I was live and die by the 3 with the Sycamores, and just love to be along for the ride. So we kind of thought like if you can finish 23-13, like that's successful. Like we didn't expect. I mean, like Josh Shirt's years were almost like exponential growth.
Yeah.
And we didn't expect that. Like I don't expect that out of any coach. Like I expect incremental growth.
Yeah.
And like the team's young. You got like a sophomore at the 5. You got Larry, who's like a 4th year guy. But you got a youngish team, and they just absolutely crushed. Crushed expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we said it, but they started the season at 111 in KenPom, finished at 38, finished 32-7 overall with 17-3 in the Valley. So they ran the table in the Valley. Some notable games, right? They lost to Bama 102-80. It was just a tough game. They were playing without Robbie Avila. So that's not great there. They lost to Michigan State, who was a top 25 team at the time, 87-75. They played 5 of our other 10 Indiana teams. So, right, we've had 11. Indiana State isn't counting that because they're playing the opponents.
Yeah.
They didn't lose to an in-state team. They boat raced IUPUI. They boat raced Southern Indiana. They beat Ball State by 11.
They were up big in that game, but Ball State came back.
Yeah. They beat Evansville twice. They beat Valpo twice. I mean, their players, right? Robbie Avila, all conference first team, Arch Madness tournament team. Ryan Conwell, 2nd team, newcomer of the year. He was an Arch Madness all tournament team member. We'll put it this way. Josh Schertz won Coach of the Year for a reason in the
Yeah.
Valley, because every player on their team pretty much that saw a lion's share of the minutes made a conference team or made a won an accolade of
He
some
ran
capacity.
6 guys all year, and they all got accolades.
Yeah, all of them. I mean,
Rightfully so.
Xavier Bludson, a non-starter, was all bench team and sixth man of the year. Right, like they just incredible team. First in the Missouri Valley. They had in Arch Madness, right? So the quarterfinal, they started in the quarterfinals. They won over Missouri State. They won, by 19, 15, 16. Sorry, math is hard. They had a semifinal win over Northern Iowa by 22. They then lost in the finals by 4 to Drake. And they were, in the NIT tournament, number 1 seed. They, again, should have made the NCAA tournament, got snubbed.
Absolutely.
They won their first round game over Southern Methodist. Second round win over Minnesota. They then won in the quarterfinals over Cincy, semifinals over Utah, and then lost in the championship to Seton Hall, another NCAA tournament tournament snub. They lost by 2, so they were 2 points away from being the 69th best team in the country, and
they were
hanging a banner.
Yeah, and they lost that game on a 7-0 run. So they were up 79-70 and then just ran out of gas there at the end.
Yeah.
But
so
I mean,
tough way to end the season, but they exceeded everyone in the world's expectations.
Yeah.
They were America's team at one point.
Very successful. Like, you are pleased.
Yeah.
Like, everyone, we'll kind of talk about the stuff that has happened after the season, but like everyone was talking about the Sycamores, which is what you want, and like everyone was happy to be there to witness the Sycamores. And I think everyone felt snubbed that they didn't get in, and I think they felt snubbed. I don't know how the deal would have gone. They had like a preliminary deal with Pat McAfee if they won the NIT for all the players to get some money, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. But yeah, successful season. You're pleased with it. If you're a Sycamore fan, you're like happy. I would have rather loved and lost than never to have loved at all.
Oh, for sure. Well, how do we want to wrap this up? I guess some Indiana news. Caitlin Clark drafted first overall to the Fever.
Surprise, dude! Like shocked.
She got a multi-million-dollar deal with Nike. She'll get a signature shoe.
Yeah, what was it? 8 figures. It's supposed to be 8 figures, somewhere in 8 figures.
Yeah, she'll get like $3.2 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I love that because, like, the women's championship game, was it the women's championship game had more viewers than the men's?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, like, which is, I mean, has to be the first time ever. Has to be.
I would imagine. I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
I love that. Obviously, they're competing against Purdue in that regard, but I think it's really, really great for women's sports, and I think we're seeing like an era of women sports and like empowerment in that area, which I love. I hope it continues, and like seeing the number of people who are like outraged that she's making as much as like a straight out of college like accountant is like fair. She's like, her contract per year is like $76,000, and people will counter that with like, yeah, but her sponsorships. I mean, yeah, but like your base salary should be like more than enough to live on. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, I will say
that's the rookie deal. Like,
the one argument is that, like, okay, WNBA players get an apartment, they get a car.
Yeah,
but no, you gotta pay them more.
But I mean, like, if you're making $76,000 a year and you get drafted to like LA, like, it sucks.
Yeah.
So obviously you make more than that, and like you're given amenities and stuff.
Yeah. I will say though, if you are a fan of basketball at all, Watch the WNBA.
Mhm.
All these players deserve the attention.
Yeah, if you want them
They
to
are
make more.
phenomenal. They are phenomenal players. They are up and down. Like they could, you know, do a lot of successful things. They
Mhm.
do a lot of successful things on the court.
Yeah, the players aren't
Watch
gonna
the games.
make more money if you don't watch.
Correct.
Like,
Correct. So
the NBA has a big viewership. All, men's professional sports do, but, like, the way to get them more money is to go to games,
yep.
watch games on TV,
And
get them more accessible.
I think Caitlin Clark is going to be a catalyst for that change.
Absolutely.
As an Indiana women's basketball fan, I hated watching her play against the
Absolutely.
Hoosiers, but you got to admit she is a generational talent, and she deserves, as painful as it is for me to say, like she deserves the attention and that she's getting along with every other woman drafted
Mhm.
in the draft last week.
I mean, it's nice that we're seeing, like, we're seeing, like, these, women's basketball players that are, like, celebrities for what they are, and not just like, "Oh, here's, like, a really attractive woman." It's like, "Oh, you know about Paige Buckets? Like, Paige Buckets is the truth." And, it's like
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark, like, she goes off, and, you're hearing about all these, like, celebrities in women's basketball, and, like, Caitlin Clark was the biggest story in college basketball as a whole.
She was a household name.
Like, I would probably say that more people knew Caitlin Clark than knew Zach Edey,
Probably.
and I think that's not even, like, a stretch.
No. No. I stand by that.
It's like
I just
we're heading in the right direction.
The one thing I ask though, as you start to support the WNBA, women's college basketball, don't be like Greg Doyle.
Oh, dude.
Don't be a weirdo. Don't be a creep. Um, Give them the respect they deserve without being
I just don't know why he had to make it about
a horrible
him.
person. Yeah.
I don't okay, so if you didn't see, like, there were a couple things that he said that were really creepy, but, like, Caitlin Clark does, like, a heart hands to her family in the stands, and, Greg Doyle, like, in her introductory press conference, like, introduced his question by doing the heart hands to her, and she was like, "Oh, you like that?" And he was like, "I like that you're here." And, she was like, "Yeah, I do that to my family in the stands," like, clearly a personal thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
clearly, and, he's like, "Oh, start doing it to me and we'll get along just fine," which is, like, unprofessional and
It's one thing to
super
do that.
creepy.
It's one thing to do that, symbol
Yeah.
to her because that's like a signature thing that she does. It's another thing to be just like freaking weird about
Yeah.
it.
I
And
mean,
she was admittedly like uncomfortable. Like
yeah,
it
you could tell. She handled it really well, but she was clearly uncomfortable, like, if you, like, are interviewing Keisei Tominaga and you do, like, his celebration where he does the, like, "Oh my gosh," like, thing with his hands on his head, like,
yeah.
but then you're like, "If you put your hands on my head, we'd get along just fine." It's like, "What?" Like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Like, he made it really weird, and it's just, like, frustrating because it was creepy, and, like, it was creepy in the first place, but, like, he would never say that to a man, and, clearly,
Yeah.
felt that it was fine to say that to a woman, which is not cool. And, like, on a different level is, like, I don't know if, like, we're in this level, but, like, to people like us or others that are, like, quote unquote trying to, like, break into the business, like, he's getting these questions and we're getting nothing. Like, we're here at our houses and
Yeah.
he's getting to ask these awful questions when you and I could ask about her, like, actual basketball knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, that's really frustrating, is, like, someone who's trying to break into, like, the college basketball and, like, the journalism world. So it's just, like, upsetting, and then I didn't I didn't read his apology or whatever.
I didn't want to give him the
I
clicks.
Yeah, I didn't need to hear it. It was in a whole column for the Indy Star, and like this is not me bashing the Indy Star or whatever. And I don't know Greg Doyle. I don't read Greg Doyle because Indy Star, I mean, I don't know how much it is, but it's not something I'm budgeting for. So like I'm not paying for the Indy Star, but this kind of maybe like what I would pay for the Indy Star for is college basketball stuff.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be Greg Doyle, like no thanks.
Right.
No
Yeah.
thanks. I will not give you my money if I have to read his crap after this. So,
Yep.
I
Well,
don't know. It's just ugh.
yeah. I mean, to wrap things up, remember to like and subscribe to the channel.
Yeah,
Your
we
your
won't be
support,
creepy. I
yeah,
promise.
your support helps us grow. The more we grow, the more we could have a platform and actually be good you know question
Objective
askers.
journalists
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not
So
creepy. Let me
your
emphasize that.
your support does go a long way. Remember to follow us on Spotify if you aren't already. If you're listening on Twitter or YouTube, if you're listening on Twitter, watching on Twitter, head over to our YouTube channel. Give us a subscription. It's free. All it is you get a notification every time we go live. It's probably our most active channel outside of actual tweets on
Yep.
Twitter. If you're listening on Spotify, and you like what we say, you want to hear more from us, give us a 5-star review. Help us, move up the algorithm ladder. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend. But with that, the clock is showing quadruple zeros, so it's time for us to get out of here. Thanks for checking in with the State of Basketball podcast. We will see you next week. And remember, in 49 states,
It's just basketball.